All right, so the cardiovascular chapter has 3 parts, and the first part talks about blood. So let's start there. So what does blood do? Functions of blood. So the first thing is transport. It takes stuff around the body. It's like a highway system. So it transports oxygen and CO2 for gas exchange. It transports nutrients to cells. It transports chemicals. Which enable communication. So you should be thinking hormones, which we just did. Of course, they travel through the blood. It has a function in the immune system. It has specialized cells, so white blood cells. It functions in homeostasis. So pH, because it moves around hydrogens. Ion balance, because of movement of sodium and potassium and all that. And it functions in body temperature. It moves to outside of the body, like the skin, to be cooled off, and it moves into the core to warm up or to keep the body warm. All right, so what is in blood? I'm going to set this off. Okay, so composition of blood. All right, so what is blood? We should know that blood is a connective tissue. It's a fluid connective tissue. Remember, a connective tissue is ground substance plus cells plus fibers. So blood is fluid, so it doesn't really have fibers, but it does have ground substance and cells. So it has plasma. That's the ground substance. And then the cells are called formed elements. Okay, so if we look at a test tube, so let's just make a little test tube here. And we know that if we put blood into a test tube, it will, and you centrifuge it, or if you let it sit there long enough, it will separate. So it will separate into plasma and cells. So the plasma basically floats on the top, and the cells will settle on the bottom. So we've got red blood cells here, and then in the middle there's something called the buffy coat. And the buffy coat basically contains white blood cells and platelets. Okay, so what is in plasma? So plasma is mostly water. Blood is mostly water. And in fact, plasma is about 92% water. It is about 7% protein. And these proteins could be anything from antibodies, those are made out of proteins, fibrinogen, which helps with clotting, and albumin. So albumin is a protein, one of the most common proteins in blood, and that helps to, it provides as a carrier to other substances through the blood. And then about 1% is just other things. So ions, sodium, potassium, calcium, hydrogen, things like that. Lipids, hormones, enzymes. So all those things can be found in plasma, in the blood. So if we look at a blood vessel, those things can be found floating in there. So a blood vessel, or blood is going to look like this, basically. You've got, these are antibodies, so that's proteins. Okay, we've got blood cells. We'll get to blood cells, which are formed elements, so in just a second. Other proteins, albumin, things like that. Yeah, so different types of things. These are all floating in blood. All right, the cells of blood are called formed elements. And the first type are erythrocytes. So these are red blood cells. Red blood cells are used in gas exchange. In fact, that's what they do, is they carry oxygen and CO2. So you're going to have lots of blood cells in here. Okay, And then there are leukocytes. And these are white blood cells. So they function in immunity. And then the last cell, green, are thrombocytes. And these are platelets. And of course, those function in blood clotting. So we've got blood, white blood cells here, and platelets. So just looking at a vessel, it's full of stuff. And it, more than just, blood cells. So that's basically what's in blood and the functions of blood. So the next video we'll talk about erythrocytes and how they are structured and what they do.